A 70-year-old man goes to a hotel. He sits at the bar alone, when a gorgeous woman approaches him, whispers she's a prostitute, and would he like a good time? The old man, a widower for many years, agrees and they go up to her room, strip down, and climb into bed. The old man performs like a teenager. The woman is amazed at how energetic and agile he is. She tells him if he can do it like that again, she'll give him one for free. He says, "Yeah, I can, but I need to take a 20-minute nap, and while I'm asleep, I need you to hold my old pecker." She agrees. He wakes up 20 minutes later and goes at it again, just as vigorously as before. The girl is amazed at the old man's stamina, and repeats her freebie offer. The old man tells her that once again, he'll need a 20-minute nap and she'll have to hold his dick while he's asleep. She does as he asks, and he wakes up 20 minutes later, and he goes at it again, with even more enthusiasm than previously. The hooker catches her breath, and needing to satisfy her curiosity, asks the old man, "I can understand why you need the nap, but why do you need me to hold your Johnson while you're sleeping?" The old man replies, "Oh, that's just so you don't steal my wallet."
A lady out taking golf lessons, and she is doing terrible. The instructor is getting pissed off. He says to her, "Listen, my dear, we have been out here all day long and we haven't gotten anywhere. You are not listening to what I tell you. Let's try something different. I want you to grab hold of the golf club just like you have hold of your husband's penis. Crack. Straight down the middle of the fairway." "That's amazing," says the instructor. "Now take the golf club out of your mouth and we'll go for distance."
There is a folktale about Pinocchio, one that claims he never became a real boy, but instead grew up and became a wooden man. One night, Pinocchio's girlfriend says to him, "This stinks. I love you, Pinocchio, but every time we make love, I get splinters." So Pinocchio goes to Geppetto to ask his advice. Geppetto says, "Sandpaper, my boy, that's all you need. Just be careful with it, don't injure yourself." A few days later Geppetto runs into Pinocchio and says, "So, my dear boy, how are you doing with the girls now?" "Who needs girls?" says Pinocchio.
3 retired gentlemen were sitting together, having coffee and talking about their life's experiences. Then one of them suggests they each relate their most exciting experience. The first, a retired sheriff, described the terrifying excitement of a shootout with Bonnie and Clyde back in his younger days. The other gents nodded and agreed that, indeed, would have been exciting. The second, a retired fireman, related the tale of a huge fire at the university several years back. There were flames, fire trucks from several area fire departments, and many damsels in distress to save. The others gents agreed that had to be a very exciting time. The third, a retired undertaker, started, "One night I got a call from the local Hilton Hotel to pick up a body. I get to the room with the body, which was under a sheet. So far so good, but when I got a look at the corpse, I had a problem. It had a huge bulge, if you know what I mean. I knew there was no way I could get him through the lobby like that. So I found an old broom and whacked that bulge just as hard as I could to make it go down." He paused. The retired fireman asked, "No offense, but how was that exciting?" The undertaker sighed and said, "Turns out I was in the wrong room."
A little girl wants to take her dog for a walk, so she asks her mother whether she can take Lulu for a walk around the block. Her mother says, "No, sweetie. Lulu is in heat." "What does that mean?" asks the girl. "Why don't you go and ask your dad in the garage?" says the busy mother. So the girl goes to her father in the garage and asks, "I want to take Lulu for a walk, but Mom says she's in heat and to ask you about it." The father takes a rag, pours some petrol on it, and then rubs Lulu's backside with it to disguise the scent. "Now you can take her for a walk," he says. "Just don't let her off the leash, and she'll be fine." So the little girl skips happily away with Lula trotting along beside her. A few minutes later she returns with an empty leash, and no Lulu. Concerned, her dad asked, "Where's Lulu, sweetie?" "She ran out of gas halfway around the block," the girl replied. "So the neighbor's dog is giving her a push home."
I've lived a few years in my home, and the pretty neighbor next door and I always flirted with each other, despite her being married. One day, when speaking to her husband, he said, "I need to have my apartment painted, but I work all day and I get tired." I tried to hire a professional painter, but the guy asked me for an arm and a leg. At that moment, I just had a brilliant idea. Don't sweat it, neighbor. I'm on vacation and painting walls is my favorite hobby. It would be a pleasure to do this task. The husband accepted the offer gladly. I don't want to brag about my conversation skills, but I barely started to paint the apartment and I already had that woman in bed with me. But, bad luck. We were just starting and I did not expect the husband to forget his documents and that, for that reason, he had to return home at that specific moment. The neighbor, listening to her husband opening the door, runs to the bathroom, and the guy enters the room and finds me, naked, at the top of the ladder, with my brush on the wall, painting. Screaming, he shouts at me, "What the heck is this? You started painting in my bedroom, and naked?" "Hey, buddy, I'm working for free, so I start wherever I want." "But naked? You really wanted me to stain my new clothes with paint? And with a boner, you bastard? And just where am I going to hang the darn bucket?"
A woman's garden is growing beautifully, but the tomatoes won't ripen. She goes to her neighbor and says, "Your tomatoes are ripe, mine are green. What can I do about it?" The man replies, "Well, it may sound absurd, but here's what to do. Tonight there's no moon. After dark, go out into your garden and take all your clothes off. Tomatoes can see in the dark and they'll be embarrassed and blush. In the morning they'll all be red, you'll see." She says to herself, "Well, what the heck, it can't hurt to try it." Next day her neighbor asks how it worked. So, she answers. "The tomatoes are still green, but the cucumbers are all 4 inches longer."
A huge muscular man with a tiny head walks into a bar and orders a beer. The bartender hands him the beer and says, "You know, I'm not gay, but I want to compliment you on your physique, it is really phenomenal. I have a question though, why is your head so small?" The big guy nods slowly. He's obviously answered this question many times. One day, he begins, "I was hunting when I got lost in the woods. I heard someone crying for help and finally realized that it was coming from a frog sitting next to the stream. So I picked up the frog and it said, 'Kiss me. Kiss me and I will turn into a genie and grant you 3 wishes.' So I looked around to make sure I was alone and gave the frog a kiss. Poof. The frog turned into a beautiful, voluptuous, naked woman. She said, 'You now have 3 wishes.' I looked at my scrawny 60 kilograms body and said, 'I want a body like Arnold Schwarzenegger.' She nodded, whispered a spell, and poof. There I was, so huge that I ripped out of my clothes and was standing there naked. She asked, 'What will be your second wish?' I looked hungrily at her beautiful body and replied, 'I want to make sensuous love with you here by this stream.' She nodded, laid down and beckoned me. We then made love for hours. Later, as we lay there next to each other, sweating from our glorious lovemaking, she whispered into my ear, 'You know, you do have one more wish, what will it be?' I looked at her and replied, 'How about a little head?'
A woman is riding the bus while trying to breastfeed her baby. The baby, however, isn't interested. After several tries, the mother is quite angry. "Drink the milk or I'll give it all to the man sitting at the back," she says. The baby is still playing around. A few minutes later she tries again. "Drink the milk or I'll really give it all to the man at the back, and you'll go hungry." The baby continues rejecting her. She tries again, very angry this time. "I'm definitely going to give it all to the man at the back if you don't behave." This goes on a few more times. Suddenly she hears a voice from the back of the bus. "Lady, will you please make up your mind? I was supposed to get off 5 stops ago."
A rabbi is planning on retiring from his main occupation, which is giving circumcisions. Over the years he's saved up all the foreskins from all the circumcisions he's taken part in. He looks at them and decides to take them to the local leather worker to see if something can be made of them. The rabbi explains that he'd like to have a retirement gift made out of the foreskins, and the leather worker agrees and tells the rabbi to come back in a couple weeks. A couple weeks later the rabbi comes back and the leather worker hands him a wallet. "All those foreskins and you only made me a wallet?" the rabbi exclaims. The leather worker replies, "Don't fret, if you rub it a bit it becomes a suitcase."
Around the beginning of the 20th century, a society lady runs into the employment office one day and demands a maid, right now. It seems she's having a dinner party that night, and her maid quit. The guy in the agency explains that all the girls he has right now have just gotten off the boat from Ireland. They're untrained. The lady says she'll train the girl but needs someone right away. The agency man asks for volunteers and Molly comes forward. She agrees to go and be trained. Well, the dinner party comes and goes, and, although some of the guests seem to disappear now and then, everything works out just fine. Molly does a great job. The next morning, the lady's walking down the upstairs hall and sees Molly in one of the guest rooms. Looks like she's making the bed, but she's just standing there. Curious, the woman walks in and looks over Molly's shoulder. There on the bed lies a condom. The lady turns bright red and tries to laugh it off. "Why, Molly," she says, "surely you have those in Ireland, don't you?" Molly swallows nervously and says, "Surely we do, madam, but we don't skin 'em."
Jane was a first-time contestant on the $65,000 quiz show. Lady Luck had smiled in her favor, as Jane had gained a substantial lead over her opponents. She even managed to win the game, but, unfortunately, time had run out before the show's host could ask her the big question. Jane agreed to return the following day. Jane was nervous as her husband drove them home. "I've just got to win tomorrow. I wish I knew what the answers are. You know I'm not going to sleep at all tonight. I will probably look like garbage tomorrow." "Relax, honey," her husband, Roger, reassured her, "it will all be okay." 10 minutes after they arrived home, Roger grabbed the car keys and started heading out the door. "Where are you going?" Jane asked. "I have a little errand to run. I should be back soon." After an agonizing 3-hour absence, Roger returned, sporting a very wide and wicked grin. "Honey, I managed to get tomorrow's question and answer." "What is it?" she cried excitedly. "Okay. The question is, what are the 3 main parts of the male anatomy?" And the answer is, the head, the heart, and the penis. The couple went to sleep with Jane, now feeling at ease, plummeting into a deep slumber. At 3:30 a.m., however, Jane was shaken awake by Roger, who was asking her the quiz show question. "The head, the heart, and the penis," Jane replied groggily before returning to sleep. And Roger asked her again in the morning, this time as Jane was brushing her teeth. Once again, Jane replied correctly. So it was that Jane was once again on the set of the quiz show. Even though she knew the question and answer, she could feel butterflies. The cameras began running and the host, after reminding the audience of the previous day's events, faced Jane and asked the big question. "Jane, for $65,000, what are the main parts of the male anatomy?" "You have 10 seconds. The head," she said nervously. "Very good. 6 seconds. The heart. Very good. 4 seconds. Oh, darn. My husband drilled it into me last night and I had it on the tip of my tongue this morning." "That's close enough," said the game show host, "congratulations."
two young guys appear in court after being arrested for doing drugs. The judge says, "You seem like nice young men, and I'd like to give you a second chance instead of jail time. I want you to go out this weekend and try to convince others of the evils of drug use. I'll see you back in court Monday, and you better have gotten some results or you're going straight to jail." On Monday, the judge asked the first guy, "How did you do over the weekend?" "Well, Your Honor, I persuaded 17 people to give up drugs forever." 17 people? That's wonderful. How did you do it? "I used a diagram, Your Honor. I drew two circles like this, oh. Then I told them that the big circle is your brain before drugs and the small circle is your brain after drugs." "That's admirable," says the judge. Then he turns to the second guy. "And how did you do?" "Well, Your Honor, I persuaded 156 people to give up drugs forever." "Wow," says the judge. 156 people. How did you manage to do that?" "Well, I used a similar diagram," the guy says. "I drew two circles like this, oh. Then I pointed to the little circle and said, 'This is your sphincter before prison.'"
A teacher said to her class, "Right, I'm going to hold something under the desk and I want you to guess what it is. This one is round and red." Little Johnny's hand shot up, but he was ignored. The teacher knew him to be a troublemaker. "It's a plum, miss," said a girl. "No," said the teacher with a smile. "It's an apple, but I like the way you think. The next one is oval-shaped and green." The teacher ignored little Johnny's eagerly raised hand again as a boy said, "It's an iguana, miss." "No, it's a kiwi, but I like the way you think, Billy." Little Johnny couldn't help himself anymore and said, "I got one, miss. It's stiff, about an inch long and with a red knob." "Johnny, that's disgusting," shouted the teacher in anger. "Nah," said little Johnny. "It's a match, but I like the way you think."
A woman went to her doctor for advice. She told him that her husband had developed a penchant for anal **, and she was not sure that it was such a good idea. "Do you enjoy it?" the doctor asked. "Actually, yes, I do." "Does it hurt you?" he asked. "No. I rather like it." "Well then," the doctor continued, "there's no reason that you shouldn't practice but **, if that's what you like, so long as you take care not to get pregnant." The woman was mystified. "What? You can get pregnant from anal **? "Of course," the doctor replied. "Where do you think politicians come from?"
A young woman buys a mirror at an antique shop and hangs it on her bathroom door. One evening, while getting undressed, she playfully says, "Mirror, mirror, on my door, make my bustline 44. Instantly, there is a brilliant flash of light, and her breasts grow to enormous proportions. Excitedly, she runs to tell her husband what happened, and in minutes they both return. This time the husband crossed his fingers and says, "Mirror, mirror on the door, make my penis touch the floor." Again, there is a bright flash and both his legs fall off.
Stanley is looking for a new desk for his office, and he spots one that looks perfect in an antique shop window. He goes inside and asks the shopkeeper how much it is. "That desk is going for $5,000, says the shopkeeper. $5,000 for an old desk? That's outrageous, exclaimed Stanley. "Ah," says the shopkeeper, "but this is a magic desk." He turns to the desk and asks, "Desk, how much money do I have in my pocket?" The desk taps one of its legs on the floor 4 times. The shopkeeper turns out his pocket, and sure enough, there are $4 coins there. "Wow, that's pretty cool," says Stan. "All right, desk, how much money does my wife have in her bank account?" At this, the desk goes wild, manically banging all 4 of its legs up and down repeatedly for over 5 minutes nonstop. "Darn, where did she get all that from?" wonders Stanley. The desk's legs slide apart, and its drawers drop down.
A woman starts dating a doctor. Before too long, she becomes pregnant and they don't know what to do. Long about 9 months later, just about the time she is going to give birth, a priest goes into the hospital for a prostate gland infection. The doctor says to the woman, "I know what we'll do. After I've operated on the priest, I'll give the baby to him and tell him it was a miracle." "Do you think it will work?" she asks the doctor. "It's worth a try," he says. So the doctor delivers the baby and then operates on the priest. After the operation he goes into the priest and says, "Father, you're not going to believe this." "What?" says the priest. "What happened?" "You gave birth to a child." "But that's impossible." "I just did the operation," insists the doctor. "It's a miracle. Here's your baby." About 15 years go by, and the priest realizes that he must tell his son the truth. One day he sits the boy down and says, "Son, I have something to tell you. I'm not your father." The son says, "What do you mean, you're not my father?" The priest replies, "I'm your mother. The archbishop is your father."
A young man decides it's better be safe than sorry and decides to take an early colonoscopy exam. As he lay on his side on the table, the doctor got ready to do the examination. As the doctor was going in, he looked at the young patient, smiled and said, "Don't worry, it's normal to get an erection." The patient, embarrassed, stated earnestly, "But I haven't got an erection. I was talking about mine."
A young man moved to the beach area and is trying to meet women, but isn't having much luck. One day, the young guy is walking down the beach, and he passes an old guy, who is completely surrounded by young beautiful women in bikinis vying for his attention. The young guy scratches his head and keeps walking, but can't understand how that old guy is meeting so many women. The next day, he takes a stroll on the beach again, and passes the same guy, who once again has many attractive young women with him. The next time he walks down the beach, he sees the old guy again, and he still has hot young women all around him. Finally, he decides that he has to know the old guy's secret, so he pulls the guy aside and asks, "How do you do it? How do you always attract so many hot young women?" The old guy responds, "Tomorrow, when you head out to the beach, slip a potato inside your bathing suit." So the next day, the young guy slides a potato into his bathing suit and heads out for his daily beach walk. But today, all the women are actually moving farther and farther away from him. He finds the old guy again and says, "Hey, what's going on? I followed your advice, I put a potato in my bathing suit, and the women are practically running away from me." The old guy sighs and says, "Try again tomorrow, but this time, put the potato in the front."
After a long night buying a foxy woman drinks, Joe took advantage by giving her a ride home. After the walk to the door, the woman asked Joe in for a nightcap. One thing led to another, and before you know it, Joe was naked. After making great love, Joe rolled over, pulled out a cigarette from his jeans and searched for his lighter. Unable to find it, Joe asked the girl if she had one at hand. "There might be some matches in the top drawer," she said. He opened the drawer of the bedside table and found a box of matches sitting neatly on top of a framed picture of another man. Now Joe was curious and a bit alarmed. Was there a husband who will come back? "Is this your husband?" he inquired nervously. "No, silly," she replied, snuggling up to him. "Your boyfriend, then?" he asked. "No, not at all," she said, nibbling at his ear. "Well, who is he then?" demanded Joe, bewildered. "That's me before the operation," she whispered.
A TV crew decides to visit a 100-year-old man living alone in a cabin in the woods. When they go there, they see he is chopping wood and carrying it all by himself. He is active and healthy and has a body of a 40-year-old man. They ask him, "What is your secret?" And the old man tells them a story. 70 years ago, there was a huge blizzard that came out of nowhere. It was winter, but it wasn't too cold for a week, and it was only lightly snowing when suddenly the wind started blowing and the snowing intensified. I went outside to call my dog when I barely saw a weak light coming from the woods. Surely someone got lost and was now trying to find a way to safety. I started calling for my dog, but I knew the lost person would hear me. Sure enough, the light started getting stronger and stronger until finally I could see a silhouette of a man holding a flashlight. When he came close enough, I ran to help him. You couldn't see more than 20 feet and I didn't want to risk getting myself lost as well. I helped the man get inside the cabin and my dog ran in few seconds later. I closed the door with great difficulty because the wind was blowing so hard. I then helped the man get his jacket and boots off and sat him next to the fireplace. The man was in shock but without injuries. I poured both of us a glass of whiskey to calm down and then a bowl of stew I was preparing. The man calmed down and started thanking me. He said he really thought he was a dead man until he heard me calling my dog. He gathered last bits of his energy and walked towards the voice. When we finished eating, we decided to both go to bed. But I only had one bed, so we would have to share. No problem, we thought, because it was very cold, and our bodies would keep each other warm. Well, one thing led to another and we started touching each other, then kissing and then making love. In the morning, the weather cleared up and after breakfast, the man put on his jacket, gathered his things and said he had to go. His wife and 3 children were expecting him and must be mortified because he didn't come home. He then gave me the juiciest kiss on the cheeks and left. I watched him go and realized I didn't even ask his name. That was the last time I saw him. The TV crew looked at each other in shock and after a few seconds one of them said, "No, we meant what is your secret for long and active life?" "Oh, that," the man said, "clean air, regular exercise, healthy food, no stress. That kind of stuff."
A good-looking man walked into a singles bar, bought a drink and settled down ready to use his best lines. But for the next 2 hours every woman he approached gave him the brush off. Then suddenly a really ugly guy walked in and within seconds he was surrounded by beautiful, available women. A few minutes later he sauntered out with a stunning brunette on each arm. The handsome guy was thoroughly despondent. Turning to the bartender he said, "I don't get it. How did that guy walk out with those 2 when I can't even get a phone number?" "I don't know what his secret is," said the barman. "But he does the same thing every night. He walks in, orders a drink, and just sits there, licking his eyebrows."
And 70-year-old married a 20-year-old. A year after the wedding the couple arrives at the delivery room. A male boy weighing 3.5 kilograms was born, healthy and beautiful. The nurse asks the old man, "Yours?" "Yes," the old man replies proudly. "Congratulations," the nurse replies. "Well," says the old man, "the old engine still runs." 2 years later the duo arrives at the delivery room again. A 3.5 kilograms girl was born, healthy and beautiful. The nurse asks the old man, "Yours?" "Yes," the old man answers. "Well done," the nurse answers. "The engine still runs," said the old man. After 2 more years, they come to the delivery room again. A 3.5-year-old male son is born, healthy and beautiful. The nurse asks the old man, "Yours?" "Yes," the old man replies. "Congratulations," the nurse says, "that's really impressive." "Well," says the old man, "the engine is still running." "Well," says the nurse, "you may want to change the oil, the last one came out black."
Sitting on the side of the highway waiting to catch speeding drivers, a state police officer sees a car puttering along at 22 miles per hour. He thinks to himself, "This driver is just as dangerous as a speeder." So he turns on his lights and pulls the driver over. Approaching the car, he notices that there are 5 old ladies, 2 in the front seat and 3 in the back, eyes wide and white as ghosts. The driver, obviously confused, says to him, "Officer, I don't understand. I was doing exactly the speed limit. What seems to be the problem?" "Ma'am," the officer replies, "you weren't speeding, But you should know that driving slower than the speed limit can also be a danger to other drivers. Slower than the speed limit? She asked. No, sir, I was doing the speed limit exactly. 22 miles an hour, the old woman says a bit proudly. The state police officer, trying to contain a chuckle, explains to her that 22 was the route number, not the speed limit. A bit embarrassed, the woman grinned and thanked the officer for pointing out her error. But before I let you go, ma'am, I have to ask. Is everyone in this car okay? These women seem awfully shaken and they haven't muttered a single peep this whole time. The officer asks. Oh, they'll be all right in a minute, officer. We just got off Route 119.
A rookie police officer was assigned to ride in a cruiser with an experienced partner. A call came over the car's radio telling them to disperse some people who were loitering. The officers drove to the street and observed a small crowd standing on a corner. The rookie rolled down his window and said, "Let's get off the corner." No one moved, so he resorted to the loudspeaker. "Let's get off the corner," it boomed. Still, no one seemed to take any notice. "All right, folks, if you don't move after I count to 3, I'm breaking out my baton," the rookie cried. Intimidated, the group of people began to leave in a hurry, casting puzzled glances in his direction. Proud of his first official act, the young policeman turned to his partner and asked, "Well, how did I do?" "Pretty good," replied the veteran, "especially since this is a bus stop."
A man sitting at a bar after work shares with the bartender why he is looking so stressed. "I'm not sleeping well. I have nightmares about a monster under my bed and I am too embarrassed to seek help." A patron nearby overhears this and introduces himself. "I overheard your story and I am a psychiatrist. Maybe I can help. The first thing is you recognize these are only dreams, and that is obvious, so I should be able to help you in a few sessions. Here's my card, give me a call." A few weeks pass and the same two are once again at the bar after work. The psychiatrist says to the other guy, "Hi, how goes the nightmares? I never heard from you, so I hope you are doing okay." The other guy says, "Things are great, the bartender helped me." Psychiatrist: "The bartender helped you? You needed a trained professional to help you. What possibly could a bartender do that a psychiatrist couldn't?" The other guy says, "He told me to saw the legs off my bed."
Once upon a time, there was a man who was peacefully driving down a windy road. Suddenly, a bunny skipped across the road and the man couldn't stop. He hit the bunny head on. The man quickly jumped out of his car to check the scene. There, lying lifeless in the middle of the road, was the Easter bunny. The man cried out, "Oh no! I have committed a terrible crime. I have run over the Easter bunny." The man started sobbing quite hard and then he heard another car approaching. It was a woman in a red convertible. The woman stopped and asked what the problem was. The man explained, "I have done something horribly sad. I have run over the Easter bunny. Now there will be no one to deliver eggs on Easter, and it's all my fault." The woman ran back to her car. A moment later, she came back carrying a spray bottle. She ran over to the motionless bunny and sprayed it. The bunny immediately sprang up, ran into the woods, stopped, and waved back at the man and woman. Then it ran another 10 feet, stopped, and waved. It then ran another 10 feet, stopped, and waved again. It did this over and over again until the man and the woman could no longer see the bunny. Once out of sight, the man exclaimed, "What is that stuff in that bottle?" The woman replied, "It's hairspray. It revitalizes hair and adds permanent wave."
The psychiatrist was not expecting the distraught stranger who staggered into his office and slumped into a chair. "You've got to help me. I'm losing my memory, doctor," he sobbed. "I once had a successful business, a wife, home and family. I was a respected member of the community. But all that's gone now. Since my memory began failing, I've lost the business. I couldn't remember my clients' names. My wife and children have left me, too, and why shouldn't they? Some nights I wouldn't get home until 4 or 5 in the morning. I'd forget where I lived. And it's getting worse. Doctor, it's getting worse. This is not an unusual form of neurosis, the psychiatrist said soothingly. Now tell me, just how long ago did you first become aware of this condition? Condition? The man sat up in his chair. What condition?
A man went to the doctor. He said, "Doc, you gotta check my leg. Something's wrong. Just put your ear up to my thigh, you'll hear it." The doctor cautiously placed his ear to the man's thigh only to hear, "Gimme $20. I really need $20. I've never seen or heard anything like this before. How long has this been going on?" The doctor asked. "That's nothing. Document. Put your ear to my knee." The doctor put his ear to the man's knee and heard it say, "Man, I really need $10. Just lend me $10. Sir, I really don't know what to tell you. I've never seen anything like this." The doctor was dumbfounded. "Wait, Doc, that's not it. There's more. Just put your ear up to my ankle," the man urged him. The doctor did as the man said and was blown away to hear his ankle plead, "Please, I just need $5. Lend me $5, please, if you can." "I have no idea what to tell you," the doctor said. "There's nothing about it in my books," he said as he frantically searched all his medical reference books. "I can make a well-educated guess though. Based on life and all my previous experience, I can tell you that your leg appears to be broke in 3 places."
With no warning and clear out of the blue, a husband said to his wife, "Honey, I have invited a friend home for supper tonight." As expected, the wife wasn't happy at being imposed upon during what she imagined to be a quiet evening. His wife replied, "What? Are you crazy? The house is a mess. I didn't have time to go shopping. All the dishes are dirty. And I don't feel like cooking a fancy meal tonight." The husband said, "I know all that." The wife looked at him with incredulity. She wondered when she would ever get a little peace. "Why in the world did you invite your friend for supper tonight?" asked the wife. The guy answered, "Because the poor fool is thinking about getting married."
A DEA police officer stops at a ranch in Texas and talks with an old rancher. From the first second, he had a bad attitude about him, annoyed he had to muddy his clean boots out in the country. He tells the rancher, "I need to inspect your ranch for illegally grown drugs." The rancher says, "All right, you can search the ranch, but do not go in that field over there." The DEA officer, clearly angry, says, "Mister, I have the authority of the federal government with me." Reaching into his rear pants pocket, he removes his badge and proudly displays it to the rancher. "See this badge? Do you? This badge means I am allowed to go wherever I wish, on any land, no questions asked or answers given. Have I made myself clear? Do you understand me?" he shouts. The rancher nods quietly, apologizes, and goes about his chores. A short time later, the old rancher hears loud screams and sees the DEA officer running for his life, chased by the rancher's big Santa Gertrudis bull. With every step, the bull is gaining ground on the officer as he runs for all he's worth. The rancher throws down his tools, runs to the fence and yells at the top of his lungs, "Your badge. Show him your badge."
One day while on patrol, a police officer pulled over a car for speeding. He went up to the car and asked the driver to roll down her window. The first thing he noticed, besides the nice red sports car, was how hot the driver was. Blue eyes, blonde, the works. "I've pulled you over for speeding, ma'am. Could I see your driver's license?" "What's a license?" replied the blonde, instantly giving away the fact that she was as dumb as a stump. "It's usually in your wallet," replied the officer. After fumbling for a few minutes, the driver managed to find it. "Now may I see your registration?" asked the cop. "Registration?" What's that? Asked the blonde. It's usually in your glove compartment, said the cop impatiently. After some more fumbling, she found the registration. I'll be back in a minute, said the cop and walked back to his car. The officer called into the dispatch to run a check on the woman's license and registration. After a few moments, the dispatcher came back. Is this woman driving a red sports car? Yes, replied the officer. Is she a drop-dead gorgeous blonde? Asked the dispatcher. Yes, replied the cop. Here's what you do, said the dispatcher. Give her the stuff back, and drop your pants. What? I can't do that. It's inappropriate, exclaimed the cop. Trust me. Just do it, said the dispatcher, a smile in his voice. So the cop goes back to the car, gives back the license and registration and drops his pants, just as the dispatcher said. The blonde looks down and sighs. Oh no. Not another breathalyzer.
Enjoyed the laughs? Subscribe for more. Hit that button now and never miss the fun.